Metal Jesus, and I'm back again. And you know what? I have something to admit. I'm not really proud of it, but the truth is I took an awful long time to add a Nintendo Wii to my collection. And the reason for that is because I think, like a lot of people, I had just assumed that the majority of the games on it were either shovelware or just crap. And yes, there are a lot of crappy shovelware games on the Wii, but if you dig deep enough, there are also a ton of hidden gems. And so that's going to be the point of this series of videos. This is going to be the first one to show you some of the games that I think are worth collecting and worth owning. Let's take a look. Lost in Shadow is a game I remember hearing about a long time ago, but for whatever reason, I forgot about it. And that's a real shame because it's definitely a hidden gem, especially for fans who like 2D platforming and puzzle games. The premise of this game is pretty interesting. You play as a shadow, and what I mean by that is that there's this boy at the top of this really high tower, and this guy comes out at the beginning of it, and he cuts away the shadow of the boy, and grabs a hold of the shadow and tosses it over the edge. So for the rest of the game, you are controlling the shadow in the background of the levels. It's actually really interesting how it plays out and how you solve things and how you do your platforming. As a matter of fact, every time I play this game, I kind of have to readjust my thinking a bit because you're so used to looking at the foreground, and in this game, that's not the case. In addition to the platforming, there are lots of switches and levers that open up paths by changing how shadows fall. Often you're dealing directly with sunlight and how that plays with shadows. There's also some light combat in this game, which admittedly isn't great, but man, the platforming and the puzzle solving is really fun. Also, special note needs to be given to the music in this game, which is mostly ambient and really sets the tone for the whole thing. I mean, the music in this game just feels like wispy and airy, kind of like a shadow. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hasn't there already been a ton of Dead Space games? And yes, there have been. There's actually been 3 of them so far. But the Wii version here is really special and pretty interesting. This Wii version is actually an on-rails shooter and a prequel to the original game. For those of you that aren't familiar with Dead Space, essentially you are a space colonist that finds this really bizarre red marker, and once it's moved, for whatever reason, it starts making people kind of go a little nutty and a little psycho. This game is played out completely in the first person, and it's on rails, meaning that you don't really control where it goes. Often when playing this game, it kind of felt like it was like a movie that I was part of. It was really well made. Lots of dialogue, lots of story, lots of characters that you interact with. And of course, lots and lots of shooting and cutting apart the necromorphs, which are essentially the aliens that are taking over these colonists, or maybe the colonists are becoming the necromorphs. Whatever it is, this has really, really solid on-rail shooter mechanics, lots of different weapons and alt firing. Just a really, really cool and well-made game. It should also be noted that this game was eventually released on the PlayStation Network and Steam, although it doesn't have the bonus features that come on the Wii version. Muramasha the Demon Blade is an action RPG by Vanillaware. Now that may sound familiar, that's because that developer also made the PlayStation 2 hidden gem Odin Sphere. In this game, you play as 2 characters. One, a fugitive who has lost his memory, including that of a crime that he committed, and also of a princess possessed by a dark spirit. Now, right off the bat, I have to say, I mean, this game just has beautiful, hand-drawn 2D art inspired by Japanese mythology. It's just gorgeous. But thankfully, this art is backed up with really strong and satisfying gameplay. It's satisfying to kick ass with tight controls, use multiple combos, and take down really interesting enemies and bosses. Being an action game, it's really nice that this supports a bunch of different controller options. I use the normal Wii controls when capturing this footage, but it also has support for the classic controller and even the GameCube controller if you still have one. And then finally, if you happen to have a PlayStation Vita, this game is going to be coming to the handheld very soon in an HD remix. Here's one of the first games I got when I first picked up the Wii, and it's called Kororinpa. Not sure what that means, but I call it Marble Mania. Okay, I know what you're thinking, a marble game? Yes, this game is actually really fun. The whole premise of this game is to navigate a marble through a complex labyrinth, collecting items and unlocking the exit. Now you do this by holding the Wii remote horizontal and flat, as though it's the environment in front of you, and as you tilt your wrist, it tilts the environment and therefore makes the marble go forward or back, or you can even do crazy stuff, like you'll get to parts where you have to really tilt it 90 degrees to get the marble to kind of fall off an edge. It's crazy. Now, I think the reason why I like this game so much is because it feels so natural with the Wii remote. It doesn't feel gimmicky, it doesn't feel cheap, you don't get too frustrated, and it just feels right at home on the Wii console. And the levels in this game, while they do get pretty tough later on in the game, as you would expect, it's always really interesting, the level design and the challenges that the game puts you through. If you are a fan of Super Monkey Ball or the arcade game Marble Madness, definitely give this a go, it's pretty fun. Red Steel 2 is a first-person brawler that's a sequel to a game that a lot of Wii owners bought, but ultimately criticized for its sloppy controls. Well, the sequel aims to fix all of that by supporting the updated Wii Motion Plus attachment. And I'm happy to report that for the most part, the sequel is infinitely better than the original. The game is played in first-person perspective, where you seamlessly alternate between shooting your guns and sword fighting, while battling up to 6 enemies, or sometimes even more. The controls are really tight in this game. I mean, you will be shooting at a guy, you'll be blocking bullets, then somebody will come up close to you, and then all of a sudden you're like in hand-to-hand combat, you're doing combos, you're doing finishing moves. It's really satisfying. I also like the mix of cartoony and cel-shaded graphics. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Borderlands, but also the gameplay, for whatever reason, reminds me of the Metroid Prime games that came out on the GameCube. It just has that kind of feel. This is a really fun game. I was pleasantly surprised. MX versus ATV Untamed. All right, I just really like doing that voice. I apologize. So I know a lot of you racing fans out there are going, really? An ATV MX game? These come out probably like 5 times a year. You know, they're on every system. Well, I wanted to include a racing game in this video, and actually the Wii version is surprisingly good. I mean, who knew? Now, for those of you that don't know, this series is all about off-road racing. This game encompasses all sorts of different styles of racing. There's off-road, there's indoor supercross, there's even mini bikes in this game. There's a ton of different vehicles too. Monster trucks, trophy trucks, ATVs, motorcycles, it just goes on and on. But the reason I want to mention it here is that if you happen to have a Wii, this is actually a really good game. The controls are tight with the Wii remote and nunchuck, which is what I use to capture this footage. But it also supports the classic controller as well. And like any good racing game, the soundtrack just kicks ass. There's bands like Bad Religion, Disturbed, NoFX, Pennywise, and a ton more. Go Squad on the Wii is going to sound familiar to a lot of fans of my channel, and that's because I talk this game up every chance I get. If you are a fan of arcade light gun shooters like Time Crisis or House of the Dead, you owe it to yourself to pick up this game. This game started in arcades, but then was ported to the Wii by Sega. It's goofy and has over-the-top humor and terrible, I mean, it's so bad it's good voice acting. It's just, you know what, that's part of the charm of a lot of these light gun games. Just the really bad voice acting, and that's definitely here.
The terrorists have taken over the plane. Their motives are uncertain. But what we do know is that the president is their target.
This game has branching paths to make you want to play through the story again, as well as character upgrades to customize your playthrough. Now, the story is somewhat generic, but you know what? It's kind of a takeoff of the 80s sort of action movie thing. I mean, there's there's the president and he's being kidnapped or something. I don't know. Who cares? Who cares? What's really important here is that the gameplay and the shooting on the Wii is solid. This game is fun from beginning to end. I love it. So that's a quick look at some hidden gems on the Wii. As you can tell, I'm having a lot of fun collecting for it. And you know what? I've got another stack here that I'm gonna be going into in other videos, so stay tuned. And if there's games that you think need to be in this list, please post below. I'd love to hear about it because I'm not done collecting. Now's a great time to do it. Some of these games I bought really, really cheap. As always, I wanna thank you for watching my channel and thanks for subscribing. Take care. Metal Jesus, and I'm back again with part 2 of my Wii Hidden Gems video. I'm gonna link to part 1 below. Now, this is my favorite time to collect for a console. It's at the end of its life because you get so many games to choose from and often really cheaply. It's one of the reasons why I have such a large collection because, you know, often you can find really, really cool games for $5 or less. And there's several of those in this video. Let's take a look. The Blob is a total hidden gem on the Wii and a game that I probably would skip by based on its cover because I just don't know that much about it. But thankfully, people on the forums highly recommended it and I picked it up and I loved it. In this game, you play a blob that has the ability to launch a color revolution. And what I mean by that is that the world is pretty oppressed and basically in black and white. There's not a lot of expression. And it's your job to bring color and happiness back to this world. You pick up paints and mix colors, slam into buildings, and also free the citizens. And it's a really cool and interesting game. I actually played this way more than I thought I was going to. Another surprise about this game is that even though the subject matter is kind of depressing, the cutscenes are hilarious. Now, some of the controls take a little getting used to. They're not crazy complicated, but they're also not really intuitive. However, I've heard that the sequel fixes a lot of that, so I plan on picking that up soon. You guys know I like my on-rail shooters. Well, Sin and Punishment Star Successor is awesome on the Wii. Now, I would go so far to say this is probably one of the best on-rail shooters that is on this console. And it's simply just amazing. The backgrounds are beautiful to look at. There's tons of enemies to kill, and they're all varied in their style and their look. Plus, you notice I'm bouncing all around the screen here, and that's because there's quite a bit of strategy involved in this game as well. You really can't shoot everything, and part of the challenge is knowing what to shoot and how to survive. The levels are varied, and the bosses can be pretty gnarly in this game. Definitely takes some thinking power to get through them and survive.
Sachi, you okay?
Of course. That is new.
I would go so far as to say that Sin and Punishment is one of the best Wii games, and if it's not in your collection yet and you like shooters, it's highly recommended. Zack Wiki Quest for Barbarossa's Treasure is a great little hidden gem for people who like puzzle games and also adventure games. In this game, you use the Wii remote to control this silly pirate named Zack and his buddy Wiki, who has the ability to help him when needed. This journey has you using over 100 items to solve puzzles, many that you combine and build yourself. Plus, there are over 30 bosses and enemies that will get in your way, and over 30 hours of gameplay. This game really reminded me of some of the best adventure games that companies like LucasArts and Sierra used to put out back in the day. There's tons of charm, devious puzzles, and great characters that a fan like me can really latch onto, and I don't know, I just think this game's really well made and a lot of fun. Cursed Mountain is a game that kept showing up when I asked some fans on my channel and also on Facebook what games they think are hidden gems on the Wii. Well, I bought myself a copy, and now I can see why this survival horror game stands out. In this game, you are trying to rescue your brother, who vanished in the Himalayan mountains under kind of weird and mysterious circumstances. You will be searching through eerie villages, ancient monasteries, and a dangerous mountainside, all while trying to keep your sanity and fight off hallucinations while ghosts and other enemies continually block your path. I found this to be a pretty decent survival horror game and kind of reminded me of some of the classics that used to play back on the PlayStation 1 like Silent Hill and Resident Evil. However, I also found it to be kind of confusing at times, not exactly knowing where I need to go, so it's pretty easy to get lost. And also the story is somewhat slow, especially in the beginning. But if you're up for it, this is a pretty cool little hidden gem. Recently, I busted out a copy of Disney's Guilty Party. When hanging out with my wife on vacation, we were looking for a game that we could both play, and a buddy of mine recommended that I get this game. And at first I was like, a Disney game? This looks pretty stupid. No, actually, we had a blast playing this game. It's so much fun. This is a detective game that up to 4 players can play. Now, you can play it single player, but it's nowhere near as much fun because if you have other players, they can help you out in each turn. Now, the way the game works is at the beginning of each level, there is a guilty party and there's a bunch of people on that level and they move around from room to room and you basically have to try to figure out who it is. It's almost like Clue that way. Speaking of clues, you go from room to room and look for clues and try to piece together who you think is going to be that guilty party at the end of the level. A lot of time will be spent playing mini games, and thankfully in Guilty Party, they're a lot of fun, especially if you have multiple players. For instance, on one level, the main bad guy blows the circuit breaker and you have to replace fuses in the dark. And you have to do this fairly quickly. Now, if you have somebody helping you out, they can hold the flashlight while you are looking around for the different multicolored fuses. It's actually really intense and just a lot of fun. Now, if you're looking for a new game and you're having a party, this game I highly recommend. Overlord Dark Legend is a game I had never heard of before. Now, I know this is kind of like a prequel to a series. I guess it's on the PC or maybe the Xbox, I have no idea. But when I got this game, I became obsessed with it. I'm still obsessed with it. In this game, you play an evil overlord with all his little evil minions as you take over the countryside and try to win back your land. This is basically a real-time strategy game, and a lot of people compare it to another Nintendo classic, which is Pikmin. Now, I think the thing that really sets this game apart, other than the humor, which is pretty funny, surprisingly, and, the fact you get to play as the bad guy, the controls in this game are really, really great for the Wii. Now, there are some issues with the AI in this game, specifically with your minions. Sometimes they don't like to do exactly what you tell them to do, or maybe they'll get stuck. It's kind of annoying, but if you can get past that and you're looking for something really strategic, check out Overlord. Speed Racer, the video game? Really? Well, yes, actually. When I asked a bunch of subscribers and fans of my channel what games they thought I should get, well, surprisingly, this Speed Racer game kept coming up time and time again. Now, right off the bat, this game looks very similar to F-Zero, but it's not as good as F-Zero, okay? Let's just get that out there. It's not, but it is really well made. It's a pretty decent, fast, futuristic racing game. You can play as Speed Racer or any other number of characters from the anime or movie, and you go around these crazy, crazy colorful tracks. Really high speeds up to like 300, 400 miles an hour, and you do shunting, you'll smash into your opponents, you hit power-ups to go faster, you'll do tricks for boost, and if you're lucky, you might just come in first place. Almost everything about this racing game is actually pretty decent. The cars feel really solid, the controls work really well, and like I mentioned before, you're doing combat, you're shunting back and forth, you're doing this car-foo stuff. And it all feels pretty good, although the car-foo stuff can get kind of frustrating. Sometimes you spin out, and for whatever reason, you don't have a lot of control. But the game is pretty fun, very colorful, and very cheap. The two No More Heroes games on the Wii are some of the most original, wacky, and wonderfully violent games on the system. And they are damn fun to play too.
Yo, help me out here. Where's this death metal dude? Bad answer.
You play as the ultra cool dude Travis Touchdown as he battles other assassins to climb the world's top killers list and become the most badass dude in town. Travis is armed with his beam katana, which allows you to slice and slash dudes apart while blood just like gooshes out of their corpses. It's awesome. The combat uses a mix of button presses and the Wii remote movement to hack dudes apart in a way that it feels pretty natural, and at the same time, you feel like a total badass playing this game.
Did you know I am a yoga master?
You don't say.
Are you familiar with any yoga positions?
Like, downward dog?
The dog can do all sorts of things. So can the cobra, the rabbit.
Also, this game is just laugh out loud funny, has great characters, and an art style that I think is just fantastic. This game is beautiful and disturbing and sexy all at the same time. Now, the original game mixed in a little bit of Grand Theft Auto. You had kind of this open city, you could cruise around and do side missions and stuff like that. It didn't really work out that well. I wasn't a big fan of it, I guess I would say. But the second game streamlines that quite a bit. So if you're new to the series, you might consider starting with the second game. So that's some hidden gems for you collectors out there. Now, I have a question for you guys. If you were to look into the future 5, 10, maybe even 20 years, what piece of Wii hardware or maybe a Wii accessory do you think is going to end up being rare or valuable? You know, maybe like a variant on a controller or something like that. I was thinking about this today, and you know what I think might be really valuable in the future? It's that official redesign of the Wii that came out in only certain countries. It's called like the Wii Mini or something like that. And you know, because it came out like at the very end of the console's life, I mean, and it's kind of interesting, and it looks totally different. So I don't know, that's my guess anyways. As always, I want to thank you for watching my channel, and thanks for subscribing. Take care. Metal Jesus, and I'm back again with part 3 of my Wii Hidden Gems video. Now, if you happen to miss out on part 1 and part 2, well, there were a lot of great games in those videos, but I will put links in the annotations on this video and also down below, so you can check those out. Lots and lots of great games. This video is gonna have 8 more hidden gems in it, and there's gonna be a special guest. Pretty cool guy. Let's take a look. A Boy and His Blob is a remake of a 20-year-old NES classic. And if I'm honest, it's one of my favorite Wii games. This 2D platformer is full of charm as you play a boy that meets a blob that crash lands near his treehouse. Now, this blob is an alien, and his homeworld just happens to be enslaved by this evil emperor, and it's your job to try to help him get back. By feeding the blob jelly beans, players can activate his special abilities to transform him into helpful tools. These are things like ladders, trampolines, parachutes, cannons, and even holes. Basically, if you get stuck somewhere, you use the blob to get out of it to solve the puzzle. The thing I like the most about this game is that it's just really well made. I mean, the platforming feels really solid, the puzzle aspect is not too difficult, you can usually figure it out, and man, the artwork and the style of this game is just fantastic. It's a total hidden gem.
What's up, guys? I'm Jason Heine from the Emulator Review. Big shout out to MetalJesusRocks for allowing me to be a part of his Wii Gems video. I would love to take this opportunity to introduce one of my all-time favorite games on the Nintendo Wii, and I would say it's probably the biggest gem of them all. This is ExciteBots. Alright guys, let's go ahead and get into some gameplay now, and just remember, everything that you're seeing on the screen is being played by MetalJesusRocks, so he is going to politely show you everything you are not supposed to do in this game. You race around in this game in robot insect bots over these beautiful maps, beautiful landscapes, water, snow, desert, beautifully detailed, really, really nice. The game features crazy mini games while racing, like darts, bowling, pie throwing at clowns' faces. What? Am I really talking about a racing game? Yes, I definitely am. The game is really, really cool with all the different types of gameplay that you have in there. It has a very active multiplayer community. Even as of recording this, people are on playing right now. If you've played Excite Truck, which was a launch title for the Nintendo Wii, then you will love this game. It's right up your alley. The game does take quite a bit of skill, and even though it looks kind of kiddie and childish, you really have to use memorization and know which way to go in the map. You can choose different directions. Some shortcuts are here, some aren't. You have to pick the best way to get through. Once you master the controls, corners, and maps, you are going to have a blast playing this game. It's one of my all-time favorites. This is ExciteBots.
You know that question, what's black and white and red all over? The answer is Madworld. The game Madworld takes place in a city which is controlled by the organizers, who pit citizens against each other for their Death Watch televised sport. You play as the ultimate badass named Jack, as you smash and punch your way through various levels and environments in this really cool and interesting black and white city. This game really looks like a Frank Miller graphic novel come to life. Now, you gamers who really enjoy beat 'em ups are gonna love this game as you craft traps, you perform nasty combos with things like chainsaws, street signs, daggers, and more. You know, for such a violent and gory game, it's also surprisingly hilarious, especially the commentators that are talking about you. Oh my god, I mean, it's just so well made, and it's just a shame that, you know, for all the time and effort that Sega put into this game, it just didn't sell very well.
On his way to hell. You don't think he maybe might go to heaven?
Rhythm Heaven Fever is the rare misstep in Nintendo releases on the Wii because it's a game that not a lot of Wii owners know about. Rhythm Heaven Fever is a music game that is, well, frankly, it's kind of crazy, it's colorful, and very addictive as it tests your ability to keep a groovy beat. Over 50 mini-games await you, wrapped in simple graphics and kind of bizarre scenarios. Like there's this robotic factory where you screw on robot heads. There's a date with a girl in a park with gophers watching. Don't ask. There's also golfing with monkeys and a ton more. Now, as a lot of you know, I'm a musician, I play guitar, and I've also played drums for years. And on top of that, I've actually played an awful lot of Rock Band and Guitar Hero. And I was surprised at the level of challenge that this game gave me. Sometimes you're right on the beat, sometimes you're on the off beat, sometimes you're a little bit ahead or behind. I mean, if you like rhythm games, this is something that will challenge you and also, you know, put a smile on your face. It's pretty awesome. The Core Gang by Atari has you controlling 3 different characters who are traveling inside this big robotic suit that amplifies their individual abilities. Now, you do this while trying to save the Earth from these subterranean evildoers deep inside the Earth's crust. This game is quirky and fun and has lots of 3D platforming, puzzle solving, and even fighting. There are 30 levels in the game filled with kooky characters and some serious challenge for platforming fans. Plus, the graphics are pretty nice. You can really tell that this game was in development for quite a while. My only caveat is, unfortunately, the controls. Now, for the most part, they work pretty well, but man, sometimes that camera is just, I don't know, it's just out of control. So, you know, if you get this game cheap and you like 3D platforming games, go for it, but just be prepared that the controls can kind of challenge you a bit. Boom Blox had backing by Electronic Arts and, well, even Steven Spielberg when it was released. But that couldn't convince enough gamers to give this physics-based 3D puzzle game any love. It bombed at retail. Now, playing this game all these years after its release, I mean, I'm just playing it for the first time, I can't help thinking that Angry Birds may owe some inspiration to this amazing puzzle game. In this game, you move, destroy, and even pull apart stacked blocks in varied configurations, while each level introduces more brain-twisting challenges. This game has a lot of personality, and, you know, dare I say, I actually enjoy it quite a bit more than the infinitely more popular Angry Birds. Now, I know I played a bunch of Angry Birds, who hasn't, but there is just something about this game. Maybe it's because it's in 3D and it just adds a layer of complexity to it, but I don't know. Boom Blox is a fantastic game, and if you like puzzle games and you have a Wii, it's highly recommended. Secret Files Tunguska is a point-and-click adventure game based on the mysteriously true story of the Tunguska phenomenon that occurred in July of 1908 in Russia. This true event is about a remote 830 square mile area that was suddenly and almost completely destroyed with no logical explanation. Now, some people think it was a meteor, or perhaps it was a spaceship landing, or maybe it was a mini black hole. Secret Files Tunguska started on the PC actually, and then it was ported to the Wii successfully, thanks to the Wii's mouse-like controls with the Wii remote. Now, like most classic adventure games, you're going to be examining a lot of objects and even combining them into more useful items to solve puzzles. And there's a lot of talking to people. Everybody has a story, and often they'll reveal hints about your next objective. Now, this game is not going to be for everyone. I mean, it's definitely geared towards old school PC adventure game fans. But if you're like me and you enjoy those, well, give this game a shot. It's actually pretty fun. Mushroom Men: The Spore Wars is a 3D platforming game about the tiny world of mushrooms that exist beneath us. One day, a comet passes by the Earth, and while humans don't seem to notice anything, it deposits a strange green dust that gives consciousness to things like mushrooms, cacti, flowers, and other creatures. Soon there is war among them, and you play a 3-inch tall mushroom man who has the kind of unusual ability to absorb the comet fragments and create his own tools. Now, this game plays very similar to some of the classic Spyro games, maybe Banjo-Kazooie, or even the 3D Rayman games, where you platform around, you're battling enemies and solving puzzles. Mushroom Men has great graphics, has decent controls. I mean, they're not perfect, but they're pretty good. And a twisted and just sick sense of humor. I mean, it's definitely laugh out loud funny. Now, if I had to choose a 3D platforming game between this and, say, the Core Gang, which I showed earlier, I would probably recommend Mushroom Men. I think this game is really fun, really well made, and I don't know, it's just a total hidden gem. All right, well, that's some more hidden gems for you collectors out there. Now, I have a question for you, like I always do. I'm curious, out of all of the weird and wacky games that came out on the Wii, what game are you kind of embarrassed to say that you like? Now, I think for a lot of people that's going to be Wii Sports. I think a lot of people think, Wii Sports, you know, I'm not supposed to like that game because it was so popular. For me, personally, it's Domino Rally. I don't know if you guys have heard of this game before. It is so bizarre. It's just so bizarre. And I can't even call it like a great game because it's not. It's more weird than anything, but it's so much fun, so interesting, and it's thankfully cheap. As always, I want to thank you for watching my channel, and thanks for subscribing. Take care. Hey guys, MetalJesus here. Today I am back with more awesome hidden gems for the Nintendo Wii. Let's take a look. All right, we're gonna start off strong with Pandora's Tower, a game that was ignored by a lot of gamers, myself included, because it was a very late release, and that's a shame because this game is awesome. So the premise of this game is very simple. You're trying to prevent your friend and fellow runaway from turning into a monster. Now, she's able to hold back the affliction by eating the flesh of slain monsters. She's not happy about it, but it does keep her alive and human. Now, your job as the hero of the story is to try to permanently cure her by letting her eat the flesh of bosses held up in these 13 towers that hold the world together. So that's the story and motivation in a nutshell, but basically your character engages in real-time combat with a sword or other weapons as it goes along, as well as this magical chain. This chain is so much fun. It's a very versatile item. You can stun enemies temporarily, you can chain 2 of them together, as well as climb up to new areas, retrieve hidden loot, and of course, get that all-important monster flesh. Each of these towers are interconnected, but they serve as their own unique level. And thankfully within those towers, there's a bunch of different enemy types that's going to prevent you from getting bored with combat. But really, it's the boss fights in this game that really stood out. Super fun, reminded me a little bit of Shadow of the Colossus a bit. Not as epic as that game, but your motivations are kind of the same. All right, you trust me, right? I mean, after Kim Possible, What's the Switch, you know I can spot the hidden gems, right? Well, Generator Rex is one of those, believe it or not. As you can see here, it's a 3D platforming / action game, but it's based on a Cartoon Network TV show. But again, don't hold that against it. Now, I'll be honest, I've never seen the show, and honestly, I don't really care, and you don't have to play this game. They do cover the basics when you play it. I mean, it's got a story, but I don't really care about that stuff. What I do care about is the gameplay. And what's fun about this is that you can switch between different weapon types on the fly, and you're doing that a lot. So you have quick sword attacks, you have a stronger smash attack, and you even have like a distance attack with rocket launchers. But what I like about games like this is that the developers mix it up even more. So there's a level in here where you literally get these gigantic stomping boots where you can leap high into the air and you just cause all sorts of destruction. I mean, why not, right? This game has good graphics, great controls, and yes, it's actually really fun to play, so definitely check it out. The next game I want to talk about is Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. This is a 3D fighting game that also came out on the DS, but again, the Wii version is excellent. In this game, you can play as 13 different Kamen Riders. I guess taken from the Kamen Riders Dragon Knight TV series. Never seen it myself, but the characters look cool. Like most fighting games, every character that you play has their own special attacks, abilities, and finishing moves. However, what I like about this game is that the fighting is stripped down to make it more accessible. This is kind of a fighting game designed for novice or casual gamers, almost like me. I mean, I wouldn't recommend this to, say, my buddy Reggie, who in my mind is a hardcore fighting game fan. But for people like me who casually play this game, you know, we don't memorize a ton of moves, a ton of button combinations, this game's pretty awesome.
This'll be the end. Snip, snip.
So if you consider yourself more of a casual fighting game fan, or if you're looking for something a little bit more on the easier side, definitely check out Kamen Rider on the Wii. Next up is Gormiti, the Lords of Nature, another game I was very surprised about because it looks like it might be a budget title, but actually this is by Konami and it feels very polished and is way better than what your initial impressions might suggest. Now, if you're like me, the name Gormiti doesn't sound familiar. Well, that could be because this is based on a highly rated Italian TV show. Gormiti is about 4 kids who possess elemental powers like water, air, forest, and earth, who use these powers as a group to help save the world. As you can see here from the gameplay footage, it plays like a standard platforming / beat 'em up, but it has you switching characters all the time, both to solve specific level puzzles, but also because you gain more points if you pick up same colored gems, which are littered throughout the level. You'll also notice that this feels very much like a 2.5D platforming game. I mean, yes, there is some depth to the levels, but for the most part, you're going just left to right or right to left, which, as you know, a retro gamer myself, I really like. And as you see from the footage, you're almost always fighting. So if you love those old school beat 'em ups, this is gonna be your game. Next up is Shiren the Wanderer. Now this is technically the 3rd Shiren game in the series. And what is this game like? Well, if you're unfamiliar with the series like I was, it's a randomly generated roguelike Japanese RPG. This is the kind of game that they don't really make that much anymore. You play as a group of wanderers that find themselves in a small village and then getting caught up in a local mystery to solve. And like in a lot of JRPGs, you meet some fun and interesting characters, but really this game is all about the dungeon crawling. That's the big appeal here. And like I mentioned previously, the dungeons are completely randomized and they're turn-based, meaning when you move, the monsters move. When you attack, they attack as well. But it is technically turn-based, so if you stop and go through the menu or you're planning your strategy, well again, the game is paused, so the monsters won't attack you, gives you time to think. Being that the dungeons in this game are randomly generated every single time you play, thankfully the auto map in this game is very useful as it shows you what you've discovered, where the enemies are when they pop up, where the loot is, and even where the exit is when you stumble upon it. Now I know this game is not the most attractive JRPG on the Wii, but I think the gameplay is unique and fun enough that I recommend you give it a go if you're looking for something a little different. And speaking of something a little different, here is Roogoo Twisted Towers. I just like saying Roogoo. So what is Roogoo Twisted Towers? Well, this game is a deceptively simple yet completely addictive puzzle game. Watching the footage here, notice that the blocks of different colors and shapes are falling from the top, and then you need to twist and rotate those platforms to allow the blocks to pass through. Then they build up at the bottom before the time runs out. I know this looks simple, right? But as you play through 100+ levels, the shapes start falling faster, the levels get less linear, and they even throw in some motion control stuff to keep you distracted. I enjoy a good puzzle game every now and then, and this is one that should not be missed if you own a Wii. Here's a game that's going to be a little bit controversial because I know that it's not perfect. It's called Calling. So what is this game all about? Well, it's a first-person survival horror game where the gimmick is that your Wii remote acts as a phone for the supernatural enemies to call you and taunt you.
I'm in the hallway on the first floor. I'm at the staircase landing on the second floor.
And as you see here from the footage, the game plays a lot like an adventure game where you spend a lot of time opening drawers, looking for items, looking for notes that advance the plot, etc. And I'll be upfront with you, this game uses a lot of motion controls, and for the most part, I think that they work okay, although sometimes they can get a bit finicky. Also, it is a bit too easy to get turned around and lost. I spent many minutes just wandering around going, what the heck do I do next? But the game does have some decent jump scares. I mean, it got me pretty good a couple times. It almost reminds me of the Fatal Frame series. It definitely has the same kind of look and vibe as those games. So while I know that this is not the best survival horror game on the Wii, it is an exclusive, so if you're a fan of the genre, definitely check it out. Next up is a game that surprised me. This is Heavy Fire Afghanistan. This is an on-rail shooter for the Wii, however it did come out on the PlayStation 3 and it supported the Move controllers, but for some reason I prefer the Wii controls, even though the graphics aren't quite as good. I think really the reason is that the Wii is a fantastic platform for on-rail shooters like this. In this game, like most on-rail shooters, you spend a lot of time just mowing down dudes, shooting a bunch of people. Also, ducking is a big part of this game. You'll see a little arrow that will point to the direction that you can duck, and that direction changes all the time, which I think keeps you on your toes a little bit. For me, right off the bat, this game feels very familiar to the arcade classic Time Crisis, and this game is fairly lengthy. It takes several hours to play through it just normally. And this game is notoriously difficult, so if you're a veteran of these on-rail shooters like I am, and you're looking for a little bit more challenge, definitely give this game a go. Alright guys, well that's a quick look at some hidden gems on the Nintendo Wii. Now if you didn't know already, this is actually my 4th video of hidden gems that I put out on the Wii. If you haven't seen those other videos, well I'll link to them up in the corner here. You know, it's funny to me, a lot of gamers think that the Wii is kind of a lame console full of shovelware, but as you can see, it's full of amazing games that you can play, and a lot of them are exclusive. Love to know down in your comments what you thought of this video, and if there's other Wii hidden gems that I need to know about, please let me know. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching, thank you for subscribing, and take care. At the end here, I want to do a quick little shout out to something that I'm not going to pretend is a hidden gem by any means, but it is something that people kind of forget about, and that is the Call of Duty games that came out on the Wii are surprisingly well made. Now, again, I'm not going to pretend like these are hidden gems. They're Call of Duty games. They've sold by the millions. However, because they use the Wii motion controls, they kind of stand alone as fantastic versions of these shooters. And so I'll typically recommend people at least try the Wii motion controls, especially if they're struggling with the thumbsticks to aim on the PlayStation or the Xbox. Now when they go over and try the Wii motion controls, suddenly it can feel very natural, especially if you get that Wii zapper and you're aiming like a real rifle. It's really cool. I would love to know what you guys think of playing Call of Duty on the Wii, and alright guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great day. Hey guys, MetalJesus here, and I'm back again with yet another Wii Hidden Gems video. I love both playing and collecting for the Wii because it's such an interesting console, and because so many games were released for it, there are lots and lots of hidden gems to find on the system. So, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so the first game I want to talk about is Dawn of Discovery. So this is a real-time strategy game that will remind a lot of players of games like maybe Age of Empires or even classic Warcraft. And as you can see by this footage, it's a nice looking game, especially for something that was originally sold as a budget title. It's got full 3D polygon lands, buildings, people to look at. Again, for a budget title, it actually is pretty good. This game takes place in the 1400s with King George ordering his two rival sons to try to help solve the famine that's threatening his kingdom. And then you play one of the sons, and then your brother is your rival, and he's also kind of a jerk, but you're both trying to gain favor from your father, who is the king. So in this game, you're trying to tame the wild lands, and you do that by building settlements that contain peasants, and they're working the land for you. So they'll be logging forests, they'll be building ships, they'll be working dairy farms that produce milk, things like that. And since these people are working for you and you are representing the king, well, you need to try to keep your people happy, and you do that by creating places of worship. You also need to earn money, so of course, taxing people is very important, but you don't want to tax them too much or they get a little grumpy. There are 7 chapters in the main story, and thankfully it's filled with really interesting and charismatic people. You really get into the dialogue in this game. It's actually often very funny. This is a really well-made real-time strategy game. It's designed to appeal to both new players of the genre as well as seasoned fans like me who are just kind of looking for something new. I mean, this is truly one of the best games in this video, so if you like these type of games, don't pass this game by.
But Devonport, you can't travel on ships. You get seasick.
Indeed, sir. A concern I addressed with your father.
And he still sent you?
Yes. He knew an easy solution to my problem.
And what would that be?
To lean over the railing if need be, sir.
Next up is Monster 4x4 Stunt Racer. This game is exclusive to the Wii, but I do need to let you know that there are actually 2 Monster 4x4 games on the Wii. So if you go looking for this, I actually like Stunt Racer better than the other one. And why do I like this one better? Well, as the title suggests, you spend a lot of time racing around pretty creatively designed tracks against AI racers, but you're doing all sorts of tricks for boost, almost kind of like SSX Tricky style. This is definitely an over-the-top arcade racing style games, but I do have to warn you a little bit here. It does use the Wii motion controls. Now, thankfully, you don't fight them in this game. It's actually pretty natural. The gameplay and controls kind of remind me of Nintendo's own ExciteTrucks and ExciteBots games. If you play those, you're going to feel right at home here. I also like how in this game it allows you to drive up the walls. That's pretty awesome. I love any racing game that doesn't really try to follow real-world physics that much. Instead, they just focus on fun. And as an extra bonus, this game also supports 4-player split screen, so if you want to do some races with friends on the couch, you can definitely do that. Here is the Munchables, yet another exclusive to the Wii. In this game, you play as a Munchable, and basically that's a Pac-Man-like creature that tries to eat all these invading bad guys across 8 different worlds. This game really reminds me of a mix of the aforementioned Pac-Man, but also Katamari Damacy, and you'll see that as you watch the gameplay footage here. Like in Katamari Damacy, you start small, and you're only able to eat things that are at your level or below. But as you eat, you grow in size and speed, and then you're eventually able to take on things that are higher and higher levels. You also have an attack that allows you to break apart bigger and higher level enemies into smaller parts that you can then eat up. This is a very useful tactic during boss battles. Now, I mentioned that this game is very similar to Katamari Damacy, which it sort of is, but as you can see from this gameplay footage, the levels definitely have more of a traditional 3D style to them, so I feel there's a little bit more platforming going on in this game than in, say, Katamari Damacy, which gives this game its own unique look and feel. I like how your level is always displayed, as well as the bigger enemies, so it's always clear as to whether you should stay away from them for a while you build up your size. This game is incredibly addictive and one of the best in this video. It should not be missed. Here is Medal of Honor Heroes 2. So this is a somewhat unusual game for me to include on this list because military style shooters are kind of dime a dozen on other platforms, but on the Wii, good first-person shooters can be somewhat hard to find, and this this is a good one. To start off with, the motion controls, they just work really well. I mean, so much so that they become basically second nature while you're playing through the campaign. And honestly, this is what I look for when playing Wii games. I mean, I'm looking for experiences that you can't just quite get on other platforms, you know what I mean? That's what I like about games that utilize the Wii motion controls really well. Now, I'll admit, the graphics really aren't that nice, but the experience is definitely a fun one. And this game has a cool little bonus called Arcade Mode, which is essentially an on-rails light gun arcade version of the campaign, but it's designed for the Wii. It basically just plays like a Time Crisis arcade game, which is pretty cool. So if you like first-person shooters and you have a Wii, well, thankfully this game can be found for super cheap, and it's definitely a lot of fun. Don't miss it. Kid Adventures Sky Captain. So this is another game that is exclusive to the Wii. This flying game is going to look familiar to fans of, say, Pilot Wings, and that's definitely a good comparison. And I'll admit, I don't know very much about this title, if it comes from, say, a cartoon. It definitely has a kind of design for kids vibe to it, but it's surprisingly full-featured and fun to play. Basically, you fly around this island collecting rings, which will slowly increase your skill level, which will then in turn unlock new planes and new paint schemes. And each plane will have a different feel when you fly as well. So for instance, some of them will be faster, some of them will turn easier, things like that. And then you'll also see challenges you can unlock by flying through them. And these include things like timed runs, maybe sometimes you have to take pictures of whales, or even race against your rival. There are 3 islands in total to explore, which feels about right. This game definitely doesn't overstay its welcome. And yes, this game uses motion controls. To play the game, you hold the Wii remote sideways, but trust me, the controls feel great. They designed the game to use them. You know, it's funny now that I'm watching the gameplay footage, it kind of reminds me of another hidden gem that I enjoy quite a bit, Snoopy vs. the Red Baron. Both of these games are highly recommended. Next up is Wicked Monsters Blast. This is another light gun shooter on the Wii, which, as you know, the Wii is great for these type of games, and honestly not something we see very much anymore on, say, modern consoles, so I like coming back to the Wii for these type of experiences. This game here is a collection of mini games, and will probably remind some of you of the Point Blank series. This game supports up to 4 players at once, or you can go at it alone like I did for capturing this footage. And like the Point Blank series, these minigames just come at you fast and randomly. I mean, you never know what you're gonna get, and often you don't even really know what the rules are. It'll sometimes display them and it'll be clear, or other times you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and you won't really know until you've actually played it a little bit. So sometimes the rules are a little vague, but you have to kind of improvise to get the best score. And like a lot of these kind of games, they definitely feature some wacky and silly characters, which is always entertaining. This is a pretty short but sweet light gun game. Now, if you enjoy these like I do, and you got a Wii, yeah, definitely check it out. Next up is Battleship. So, when you see this, what do you think of? Do you think of the movie that came out a couple years ago that starred Rihanna that pretty much tanked? Or do you think about the classic naval game that you played as a kid? I know me, I probably think of both. Well, I'm happy to report that thankfully this version is way better than the movie, and also a lot better than the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 versions that came out as well, because those were mostly like Call of Duty clones. As you can see by the gameplay footage, the Wii version plays much more like Nintendo's Advance Wars, where you control naval ships in a command view while you're trying to take on these battle aliens, I guess, that are invading Earth, but it's definitely more of a turn-based tactical strategy game. And like in Advance Wars and other games of this type, you have a wide variety of ships that you can then take turns moving into strategic positions. Some of the ships that you control may be fast but fragile, others are slow but powerful, and pretty much everything in between. This really is a deep tactical turn-based game, and yes, it just happens to be based on a movie. Also, the Wii version is pretty cool because you can trigger a special attack that then turns this game into like a first-person shooting gallery, giving you direct control over taking out the guns on an enemy ship in real time. Basically, it's like an arcade light gun sequence that really ups the excitement when it occurs. Now, trust me, this game is way better than it should be, but like I said, skip the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 versions. The Wii version is the one to get. Pitfall: The Big Adventure. So this game was actually called Pitfall: The Lost Expedition on Xbox, PlayStation 2, and GameCube, but for whatever reason, they changed the name when they brought it over to the Wii. As you can see by the gameplay footage here, this is a 3D platforming game, but it's based on the classic Atari series. And immediately when I launched this game, I was like, wow, I mean, these levels are pretty lush and honestly way better than I expected it to be. I didn't know if this is going to be a budget title, but no, it actually looks pretty good. And you do similar things in this, like the classic Pitfall game, including jumping over gaping pits that are opening and closing. That's always something I loved in the original, as well as jumping on the backs of crocodiles to get over to other areas. There's puzzles, there's traps, and just a bunch more. So yeah, it definitely feels more like a modern 3D platformer, including areas that are a little bit more open. Also, they've added colorful characters to interact with who, you know, kind of tell the story and kind of help you along the way. And there's also environmental puzzles. There's a bunch to this.
Will you help us locate everyone?
I get to rescue the girl?
I suggest you let her think she rescued herself. Here, you might try gathering water from that pond out there. Oh, it's very clean. Tasty even. I think it may even possess healing properties. And it looks like you could use some healing.
Thanks.
And being that it's the Wii, well, the developers couldn't help themselves, and yes, it does have some motion controls. You use them primarily for attacking, so you do that kind of waggle thing, which isn't great. It's not great in this game, but it's also not too annoying either. A nice little bonus is that you can find the original Pitfall and Pitfall 2 to unlock, as well as the ability to make your character look like the blocky 8-bit low poly version of Pitfall Harry. I mean, why would you do this? Well, because you can. Now, admittedly, I haven't played this game on the other consoles, but I did enjoy it on the Wii. It's not perfect, but it is a fun 3D platforming game. All right, guys, well, that is another 8 hidden gems for the Nintendo Wii. It's amazing how many games came out on that system, and I keep finding them. I actually have another stack ready to go for another video. And by the way, I would love to know if you guys have played these games or if there's other Wii hidden gems that I need to know about. Please let me know down in the comments below. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care. Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and you know what? I am still playing with my Nintendo Wii. I still enjoy the system. I still love trying to find hidden gems for this. But after doing so many of these videos, I'm starting to wonder, is it tapped out? Are there any more hidden gems to be found? Let's take a look. All right, so the first game I want to check out is called Pirates PlundArrr. You have to do it with that little R at the end of it. So this is a game that is exclusive to the Wii, and right off the bat, I know many of you are going, hey, this looks an awful lot like Castle Crashers, and yeah, you'd be right. Now, I don't think this is actually made by the same developers, but you can tell that they were heavily influenced by that game and were using it as sort of like a blueprint to make a beat 'em up, you know, on the Wii. And I gotta say, this game is actually a lot of fun. So as you can tell, the game has really colorful 2D style graphics and also animation. Again, very similar to Castle Crashers. There are 40 different enemy types, so lots of baddies to beat up. Plus it has a lot of RPG elements where you can earn XP to upgrade your character as you progress. And there are a bunch of different weapon types that you can use both in your primary and secondary attacks. This game is just a really fun beat 'em up. It's very simple, very easy to get into. It's a lot of hack and slash fun, and if you have a Wii, definitely check it out. Next up is a racing game that I have been planning to talk about for a while now. It is exclusive to the Wii and the DS, if you want to get technical, and that of course is Need for Speed Nitro. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey, how can a Need for Speed game be on a Hidden Gems list? Well, I would make the argument that this is definitely, I think of all the Need for Speed games, this is probably the one that is most often overlooked, and that's a real shame because this game is designed from the ground up to be a Wii exclusive, and it's just arcade goodness. This is an awesome game. And the thing is for me is that the Need for Speed series has kind of been going a little bit more realistic in the last, I would say, decade or so, and that's fine. I like those games, but this is definitely a throwback to just pure arcade goodness. You can see by the gameplay footage here that, yeah, it doesn't play like a normal Need for Speed game, at least one that's come out in the last 10 years. And again, I think that that's actually a really good thing. This is so much fun. Being that it's a Wii game, a lot of people are concerned that, does it have motion controls? Well, yes, but thankfully you can turn them off. So actually in this gameplay footage, that's actually what I've done, is I've turned it off. I'm playing it normally as it was meant to be. And really the game is just super arcadey. You can tell by this footage, it kind of looks almost like some of the classic Burnout games, which is, you know, why I like it. The game has 5 different locations: Cairo, Rio, Madrid, Singapore, and Dubai. And it also has licensed cars, which is cool, but again, as you can tell here, they're a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more colorful. So yeah, if you like arcade racing games, you like the Need for Speed series, and you got a Wii, definitely check out Need for Speed Nitro. Oh no! There goes Tokyo, Go Go Godzilla! Unleashed on the Wii. So yes, this is Godzilla Unleashed on the Wii. Now, of course, I do have to say this also came out on the PlayStation 2. But if you got a Wii and you like Godzilla, you should definitely pick this up because this is a really fun monster beat 'em up game on the Wii. It's surprisingly fun. And when I say surprisingly fun, it's because, well, when this game originally came out, it got a little bit beat up by professional reviewers at the time. And I have to say, I think that's a little bit harsh, especially with a little bit of hindsight now that we can see it for what it is. You know, again, maybe the PlayStation 2 version was better, but I have to say that this game uses the Wii controls, the Wii motion controls, and honestly, it actually works really well. They're not very frustrating. It just feels very natural, very fun. And if you're a big fan of giant monsters destroying everything in its path, well, this game is going to be for you because it has a huge roster of 26 different monsters. Well, monsters might be pushed in a little bit because there's aliens and all sorts of other stuff like that. But yeah, this has got a huge roster of stuff to choose from. One of the really cool parts of this game is that you can totally customize a battle if you wish. You can go in there and modify almost everything that is happening in this game. So including like what type of monsters, the type of power-ups, how often the health regenerates. You can even control like the size of the monsters. It just goes on and on and on. It's actually really cool if you just want to totally just get in there with a friend of yours and beat the tar out of each other. It's pretty cool. You know, the Godzilla games can be kind of hit or miss, but if you have a Wii and you have some friends over, this is a pretty good time. Definitely check it out. Here's a game that turned out to be a total surprise because, well, one, I never actually saw the movie, and two, It's a licensed game. And you know how that can be sometimes. That can spell trouble, but trust me here, Ice Age Dawn of Dinosaurs is really fun. First off, I should probably point out that this also came out on other systems, but again, we're just focusing on the Wii here, and yes, it's great on this. Now, as you can see by this footage, this is a 3D platforming game that's pretty similar to a lot of the games of the time, very similar to kind of like the Ratchet and Clank games where you platform around, you're collecting stuff, you're doing a little bit of combat, things like that. But the reason why it's on this list and why it's in this video is because it's so well designed. I mean, it's got great graphics, it has really good level design, great writing, and honestly, the voice acting is often hilarious, and there's tons of it in this game. And this game did a really good job of really grabbing my attention as I was capturing this footage. I was having a lot of fun playing this. Now, there are some motion controls in this game, but I feel like that it's not super annoying when they do because, you know, for the most part, you're just moving with the nunchuck. And then there's a little bit of combat with the motion controls, which, yeah, not probably my favorite, but again, it's not too bad. But then there are times when you're shooting something in first person, and I really feel like that's a good use of motion controls. It actually feels more natural than trying to use just the thumbstick. So yeah, this is a really fun and well-made 3D platforming game. If you like these kind of games, you should definitely check it out because this isn't really hard to find. And again, if you don't have a Wii, you can get on other systems as well. So you guys know that I love light gun games in the arcade, but one of the reasons why I love the Wii so much is because so many light gun games came out for it, and I've covered many of them over the last couple years, but one of the last ones I want to talk about is this one right here. It's called Top Shot Arcade. And it's kind of funny because, you know, I went on the fence about this one, about whether I wanted to talk about it because, you know, this is definitely, of all of the light gun games probably released, it's definitely one of the more realistic ones because you're technically hunting animals in the forest, and maybe not everyone's going to be into that, but I wanted to cover this one anyways because the truth is, it's a fun light gun shooter. And yes, you're shooting animals in the forest, and that might not be everyone's cup of tea. I totally get it, but this is a fun game. It's well made, and it deserves a mention.
Load your gun. No score for him. Popped him in the noggin.
Now, a couple things that I notice about this over other light gun games is that, one, the stages actually are very short, sometimes lasting only a minute or two. And two, the precision of your shots is very important in this game, almost like you're really going hunting. And I know that's kind of silly to say because this is obviously an arcade game and, you know, it's not realistic really in any way, but it is definitely tougher than it looks. You know, unlike other light gun games I played before, this one I really had to replay some of the levels multiple times because you know, as you see here, some of these animals are running really fast, and it can be pretty hard to hit them in a spot where it'll actually take them down. So anyways, I know this game is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I'm pretty sure that no actual animals were harmed in the making of this game, and so if that's something that you're interested in and you like light gun games, you should definitely take a look.
He's taking a dirt nap.
All right, next up is a game that, well, I just kind of stumbled upon. I didn't really know that much about it when I first bought it, but that is a game called Fling Smash. The big selling point for Fling Smash was, at the time, it was one of the first games to support the Wii Motion Plus, and that is the device that basically makes the Wii Motion even more accurate and more sensitive. And like the title of the game suggests, that's exactly what you do in this game. You fling and then smash for score. And really the game kind of feels a little bit like Pong or tennis, but because of its physics and because of the way that it bounces around, it also feels a little bit like pinball. And what you're trying to do is take out as many of these bricks while the level is auto-scrolling, and you'll often have like power-ups and multipliers and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on, especially as the game progresses. And so what you're doing is basically just controlling the direction and power of that critter that you're knocking around the screen, and then he takes out bricks. But you can also press a button on the controller, and that will instantly stop him. So that way you can like auto adjust the angle and also the how much power you want to give him and send him off on another direction. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is not an amazing game, but I was surprised at how much fun I had with it, especially when you consider that when I bought this, I paid $1 for it. So when you want to talk about hidden gems and games that people are kind of overlooking, this is definitely one of them. And also, I would say, this is probably, if it's not your cup of tea, it may be really good for kids. That's kind of what it feels like it's designed for, so just keep that in mind. All right, next up, we got another arcade racing game, this one called Hot Wheels Track Attack. Now, I've covered the Hot Wheels series in other videos before, and the thing about the Hot Wheels series is that, again, it's a series that always adds in fun. You know what I mean? They're never simulators. They're always about just over-the-top action, and that's actually what I really like. Now, I can read your mind, and I know what you're saying. This game looks like ass. And you're right. It's not a very good looking game, even when you consider that it's running on the Wii. I know, I get it, but here's the thing. All I care about is, is there a smile on my face when I'm playing a game? And the answer is yes. When I play this game, actually, it's a lot of fun. I mean, any racing game that has a loop-de-loop, well, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot. You know what I'm saying? And I want to point something out, and that is in this game, there is some physics, and you can kind of see that in the footage here because, you might see me sliding around corners, and that was a part of the game that I wasn't expecting, and I actually think that's pretty cool because once you play a racing game like this and you know sort of the rules of it and how the cars handle and how it's going to take the jumps and stuff like that, how it's going to go around corners, I really dig that. So it's a nice mix, again, of arcade and just enough realism to keep it fun. And the other thing when it comes to racing games, and I want to mention it here, is that you can turn off the tilt controls. So that's very important to me because, sometimes tilt controls can be a nightmare, and it's good that some of these games allow you to toggle that. So this one and also Need for Speed, like I said, you can just play them as normal. And I mentioned the loop-de-loops, right? Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely check it out. Okay, so first I talked about the Ice Age movie game, and now I'm talking about Penguins of Madagascar. Don't hate me for this, okay? Just stay with me for a second. Yes, this is a licensed game based on an animated movie, and typically those are crap. I know, but occasionally you do get gems like this. So what's going on here? Well, basically this is kind of like a 2.5D platforming / puzzle game, and what you do is you switch between 4 different penguins that each have their own unique abilities. For instance, one of them is smart and can hack computers, another one can jump and then hover over gaps, which is really important if the floor is electrified. Another one is really strong, and then another one can actually dash. And so what you're doing in this game is constantly switching between those 4 penguins to get past certain obstacles and enemies and get through a level. I actually found this game to be quite challenging. It was not easy and definitely required some creative thinking. So yes, this is a licensed game based on a movie, and like the other one, I haven't seen it. I do see some of these occasionally, but that's okay because, again, it doesn't matter. It just matters if the game is fun, and this definitely is. All right, and then finally we have Hidden Mysteries Titanic. So as you can see by this footage, it is a point-and-click adventure game that mixes sort of traditional style PC adventure game item hunting that you would see like in, the LucasArts games, but also it puts in there the hidden object gameplay that is really popular, like say on mobile. And as you can tell by the gameplay footage and also the title of the game, it's really a retelling of the story of the Titanic and its last voyage, or I guess its maiden voyage that was also its last because of course it sunk to the bottom of the ocean. But this also has new story and also characters. I would say that it kind of follows the James Cameron movie, but it's just different enough to feel fresh. But again, the reason why it's on this list is because it really is a mix of that point and click, you know, picking out objects in the background, putting them together to solve puzzles, but then also it has sections in it that you have to find, like say, you know, all the different pieces that are hidden within the background. And so it's very much like, you know, two different types of games mixed together, and it feels very natural. I will say though that the puzzles can be a little bit obtuse. You will probably get stuck in this game and wonder what the heck to do. Now, there is a hint system, which is very nice and it's completely optional, but you are going to be clicking around kind of wondering, what am I supposed to use this for? Where is it supposed to go? Now, there are 4 different endings in this game because you do have a bit of choice as to how the narrative goes. And as you complete the game, there is also a bonus level that you can unlock. And I've always felt that these kind of point and click games are well suited for the Wii because the Wii motion tracking actually is very mouse-like, and typically these games would be made for the PC. So again, if you like puzzle games, you like a challenge, you like a good story, definitely check it out. All right, guys, well, that's another Wii Hidden Gems video in the bag. And I think this makes my 6th or 7th video about Wii Hidden Gems over the last, geez, probably 5 years. And the thing is that I'm kind of wondering, I mean, is that it? You know, is this the end of the Wii Hidden Gems, or are there more to be mined? According to Wikipedia, there are over 1,500 games released for the Wii, so I don't know, I'm kind of curious. Although, you know, I haven't actually dove very deeply into other regions either, so there could be actually some Japan exclusive ones, or maybe over in PAL territories. That'd be kind of interesting to check that out. Either way, I'd love to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If there's some hidden gems that I haven't played on my Wii, I would love to know and share them with you. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing, and take care.